Colin Kaepernick is one of the faces of the Nike Just Do It campaign.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
Twitter the last 24 hours has been people lighting Nike shoes on fire.
Nike is the official uniform supplier of the NFL.
USA Gymnastics is on a new path with new leadership.
Another change in the leadership, Kerry Perry has resigned as CEO.
I haven't heard from any one of you say to the parents, to the children, I'm sorry.
I've said I'm sorry.
If you don't want to say you're sorry, I don't want to talk to you. This cannot be tolerated.
What you see may change your perception of any sporting event. Get this, shoot this. Welcome to Outside the Lines. I'm Bob Lee. Colin Kaepernick, Nike, the National Football League, backlash, boycott, and the cresting of emotions and opinions, all 55 and a half hours before the NFL regular season begins. That's our big story this day after Labor Day in Studio Z. He is the most famous unemployed athlete on this planet, and Colin Kaepernick is suing the National Football League with a major procedural victory last week, suing the NFL for what he says is collusion in keeping him out of the league because of his political beliefs he has expressed by kneeling during the national anthem. And now, Kaepernick is the literal face, one of them, the face of a Nike campaign celebrating its Just Do It slogan, a corporate symbol for the official NFL uniform and sideline apparel provider. In fact, Nike this year extended its likely multi-billion-dollar NFL contract for 10 years. So Nike provides the NFL the very uniforms Kaepernick is suing the NFL for not allowing him the chance to wear. Politics, strange bedfellows, etc. How strange? Well, the former president of Iran is at it yet again. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who last month tweeted about President Trump's criticism of LeBron James, is again tweeting like Mahmoud from Queens. The NFL, and he uses the hashtag, the NFL season will start this week. Unfortunately, once again, Kaepernick is not on an NFL roster, even though he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Hashtag Colin Kaepernick, hashtag NFL. Nike's decision to feature Kaepernick, something the NFL has declined to comment about today, produced images on Twitter of individuals protesting by cutting or defacing or burning the Nike logo or Nike products, images of political protest, which at the same time might very well project the image that Nike is intending. Kaepernick's protest, which now seems to be almost ancient history in the immediacy of the news cycle, it started 25 months ago. Now, the sons of Kaepernick, if you will, those players who graphically and physically demonstrate protest during the pregame, had dwindled to just over 24 by the final week of the 2017 regular season, with only 7 players actually kneeling. Through the preseason just concluded, so-called anthem protests. And remember, players are not protesting the national anthem, but they're using the anthem's playing to make a political gesture. The number of visible protests or statements in this preseason was even more infrequent. It was in the single digits each week. All of that while the NFL has frozen implementation of a new strengthened policy while the owners and the players continue conversations about how to negotiate this thicket. This is the playing field that Nike is on. ESPN business reporter Dan Ravel broke this story nationally last night of Nike's decision to feature Colin Kaepernick. All right, what is their reasoning here? What is their plan?
Well, I think, Bob, what they've learned, what Nike has learned, is that taking no risk is really the biggest risk of all. And so they had Colin signed since 2011. They planned to use him at some point. And with the 30th anniversary of the Just Do It campaign, they decided the time was now. I think they certainly knew exactly what the consequence was going to be. They knew that there was going to be backlash. They knew that there was going to be support. And I think they made a calculated risk here. All
right. Clearly, they're a publicly held corporation. The only principle they're doing this out of is AL, not LE, if you will. Your synonyms here. They're doing it to make money. But to what extent did they really put this through the grinder and look at the risk of what they were churning up here?
Well, we still don't know, but because I don't even know, I've not been able to report what type of conversations they had with the NFL. You would assume they had a conversation with the NFL, given that they just started this 10-year new deal worth, yes, billions of dollars.
How awkward is that, by the way?
I mean, it's pretty awkward because Roger Goodell didn't say, "Oh, this is great." I mean, clearly. And obviously it's compounded by the fact that the NFL's had so many issues, more than they can imagine. But yeah, no, this is certainly awkward. And I don't expect it to be the last thing that they do with Colin Kaepernick. I don't know what it will be next, but I don't think that this is just the end and is a one-off.
What was his status before this campaign announcement? Was he still under contract from his playing time?
Yeah, he was under contract since 2011. He's been under contract. Again, they did think that they would use him again. And from what I've been told, there was the sense that this is not the old Nike. The old Nike would be just as passive as possible, not to rabble-rouse at all, not to cause any stir or anything. That was the risk. But as Serena Williams, as LeBron James, as athletes who they have contracts with have stood up to social change, social issues, the pressure is more on Nike to do something instead of just sit there, both from the public and the athletes themselves. And I think they felt that pressure and they had the sense that they had to use him. I think people within Nike were surprised, even though they knew they had him and even though they knew that they were going to do this. I think they were surprised by how much they owned Labor Day yesterday. Yeah. For 8 to 10 hours, they had the number one trending tweet in the world.
In a short sentence, what's the age group they're shooting at here? I got 10 seconds.
Who knows? I have no idea what the future is, but I think ultimately this will be seen as a net positive for Nike.
All right, Darren Ravel broke that story. That this topic, thanks, Darren, is politicized and emotional is rather obvious. ESPN's announcement 2.5 weeks ago that this network would continue a long-standing policy of not normally televising the national anthem during NFL games. That announcement became vibrant national news. An NBC Wall Street Journal public opinion poll published 5 days ago shows a mirror image divide in the national mood along political lines on the issue of NFL players kneeling during the national anthem. All of those polled, Democrat, Republicans, and Independents, altogether say that such kneeling is inappropriate by an 11-point margin. It's 54 to 43%. But the divisions by party are stark. Republicans by 9 to 1 nearly say that kneeling is inappropriate. Democrats by better than 3 to 1 have the opposite view. So that's what Nike has bought into, and that's where NFL football is sitting culturally as we now turn to Dominique Foxworth of the Undefeated.com. Of course, you know he played 6 years in the National Football League. And Charles Robinson, columnist for the NFL for Yahoo, who writes of the enormous risk that Nike is taking with this news. Charles, what do you make of these strange bedfellows here? We've got Nike, the NFL, and Kaepernick all together in the same news cycle that is just continuing to go and go and go.
Well, I think what's interesting here is you pointed to sort of the demographics that Nike's reaching for. Now, they've done market research before signing this extension, essentially, with Colin Kaepernick. And while their market research is proprietary, I think what's really interesting is the NFL used the Glover Park Group, a Washington, D.C.-based consulting firm, to actually ask fans in August of 2017 whether or not they believed he should be signed, he should have an NFL job. And what those results showed was that it skewed tremendously high amongst millennials. Millennials very much sided with Colin Kaepernick. And I think if you're looking for what Nike's reaching for here, they're reaching for a younger demographic, the next wave of the shoe buying demographic and apparel buying.
What do you make, Fox, of the way this is sitting down in the culture right now?
Yeah, I think this is Nike taking a big shot. And I think we think about apparel companies and sports companies as competing on the performance of their merchandise, but those days are long gone. Everyone's merchandise is pretty much the same. The shoes react the same. They're now competing on the element of cool, which is why you see companies like Adidas sign people like Kanye West. He can't ball, but he's cool enough to sell shoes. And Pharrell has shoes with Adidas. Drake has a shoe line. It's about aligning themselves with something that they believe is cool and resonates with younger people. And Colin Kaepernick is certainly that.
So you have the reality, though, guys. And Charles, I'll hit you first on this, of Nike, as Darren said, taking a risk, the big risk, because they've been complacent on something that's based on principle, as a morally held belief. But at the bottom of this, there is a huge profit margin, a profit motive, I should say.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, as Darren mentioned, socially forward athletes right now are not rejected, particularly when you compare it against numbers with the younger demographics. And again, this is about Nike reaching for not only the younger demographics, but maybe part of the edge that Nike perceivably lost over the last few years. Remember, this was the company of Charles Barkley, I'm not a role model. This was the company that was very face-forward with Michael Jordan and Spike Lee in the Mars Blackman campaign. There was a number of, previous enterprises with Nike that were very similar to this. This is not new ground for them.
But you look, Fox, at those numbers from the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, and even though the players are not protesting the anthem, players are talking about social ills and pathologies they want to, and we've talked about this numerous times on this show. Right. You look at the divide in this country, you look at the reaction to our president at this network's decision to announce that we will not, as a network, televise normally the anthem. It became a major news story. This issue is red hot everywhere on either side of it still.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that brings to mind that quote that gets attributed to Michael Jordan all the time of Republicans buy sneakers too. Apparently they don't, because if they did, I'm not sure that Nike would be taking this stance that they do now, with it being 9-1, as you said, Republicans being opposed to Kaepernick being on the team. And
until there's a sale on Nikes, maybe.
Yeah. My guess is that those are the same people who are burning the shoes and socks or whatever. But Nike doesn't seem to be concerned about losing that significantly older and probably more right-leaning demographic as a profit base going forward, because they want to get on board with the bluer and younger group.
Let's put on our tinfoil hats. Charles first here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how politicized do you believe everything around the NFL this year? And I know some of this depends on when the next tweet comes from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. How politicized will this NFL season be, do you think?
I think as politicized as ever. All we've seen is the reactions, and the fervor has only grown over time. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And as you said, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is not going to relent on this front. And we know Donald Trump has a history of speaking out when it comes to companies that do things he does not necessarily agree with. I think we're entering into that territory with Nike.
Fox, what do you see this year?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it will, with all the other things that Trump has going on, it seems to coincide with when he tries to misdirect. So I suspect that tweet is coming soon, when he wants us to look over at what's going on in the NFL and not what's going on in with his campaign and with his administration.
Can't wait to hear from the National Football League on this. Dominique Foxworth, Charles Robinson of Yahoo. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And next, the Larry Nassar scandal brings down another leader at USA Gymnastics. This story is burning red hot, and we've got it next.
I'm a squeaky toy, and I've got one job, getting chomped on by this little ankle sniffer. So pardon me for feeling inept compared to Geico, who does so much more. Like while I'm getting slobbered on, Geico is creating cool technology like their mobile app, which lets people pay their bills or file a claim. Plus, Geico is the fastest growing auto insurer for the last 10 years. Is it too much for me to ask for one more feature? Fast and friendly claim service like Geico, maybe? Oh, great. I'm getting buried again.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Outside the Lines is brought to you by Heineken. Enjoy responsibly.
More stuff that matters. The NCAA back in court today, defending its amateurism rules. Former college football players suing the NCAA, claiming the caps on scholarship value represent a violation of federal antitrust law. The case is in front of the same federal judge in Oakland who did cap compensation for likeness and images in that landmark O'Bannon case. That ruling was overturned on appeal. Elena Delle Donne is expected to play for the Mystics tonight in their decisive Game 5 semifinal matchup in Atlanta. On Sunday, Delle Donne with a double-double, wearing a bulky knee brace in Game 4. It was feared the former MVP would miss the balance of the series. She had a scary injury near the end of Game 2. And today, in the B block, the bitter fruit of the Larry Nassar scandal shows no sign of abating, leading late last night to the essential firing of the new head of USA Gymnastics after only 9 months on the job. Kerry Perry had been hired with no experience in the field of Olympic sports, inheriting a federation in extreme crisis. And now, days after the United States Olympic Committee called for a change in leadership, and days after, an elite coach was fired for contacting federation critic and Nassar survivor Allie Raceman, Perry resigned under pressure. She may best be remembered for ineffective appearances before several irate congressional committees.
Do you ever do background checks on any of your coaches like this?
First of all, let me say that
now, do you ever do background checks on any of your coaches like this?
So
it's a yes or no question.
There are background checks that are being done currently.
Did you do background checks on him? This sexual predator who is in jail, in prison for 30 years. Did you do background checks on him?
I was not there. I can't answer that question.
Well, find out who was there because I need an answer to it, okay?
Yes, sir.
USA Gymnastics was aware of allegations against Nasser in 2015 and made the decision to renew its contract with the Karoli Ranch in spring of 2017. Why was this agreement renewed in April of 2017 despite knowing about his sexual abuse for years?
Chairman Harper, I can't answer that question. It's a very important question. And again, I think that many of these questions hopefully will be answered through the independent investigation.
Now, in a moment, I'll be speaking with the initial whistleblower, the survivor of abuse by Larry Nasser, whose outcry sparked this widespread scandal. First, it's always good to speak with USA Today's Nancy Armour, who's reporting, along with colleague Rachel Axon, lays out the case for Kerry Perry's firing. There they have their piece in today's product. Nancy, welcome. How would you describe Kerry Perry as it turned out to be, just a 9-month tenure at the head of this federation?
A train wreck. It's been complete chaos, and it's hard to say or hard to believe that the organization could be in a worse position than it was a year ago. And unfortunately, that's the case. There has been no tangible action that shows that this organization is any closer to getting it.
What was your largest error, do you believe?
I think there were two. I think the first is not reaching out enough to the survivors, not conveying enough the apology and the sympathy for what these women went through. That, I get that there were legal ramifications, but you need to find a way to do it because people don't. There still is a belief that USA Gymnastics is not sorry or has not recognized the pain and trauma these women have gone through. And then just her complete and utter lack of preparation in front of the congressional hearings was, those performances were really, frankly, embarrassing. There were questions that she should have been able to answer. It wasn't a secret, some of the things that she was going to be asked, and yet she showed up and just looked woefully unprepared. Well,
correct me if I'm wrong. The entire board of directors of this federation, USA Gymnastics, was changed out, right, before she was even hired. So they had, they essentially hired her. So we're back prior. We're not even close to square one here and trying to figure things out.
No, and the Deborah Daniels report made 70 recommendations, and only 47% of those have been fully implemented. Another 47% are either ongoing or in the process. But we're a full year after that report was released. We're 2 years after Rachel went public with her story of abuse by Dr. Nasser. At some point, you have to begin to move forward, and this organization is just, its wheels are stuck in the mud.
I'm going to ask a very insensitive question, but what is the state of this sport internationally competitively, in light of what's happening internally here?
Well, and that's the issue that gets lost. There's 2 years until the Tokyo Olympics, and the American women are still very, very strong. And yet these young women who their entire focus should be on athletics and competing, and yet every event that they go to, they're asked about this. They're asked what they think the federation should be doing. They're asked what they think about the job that Kerry Perry was doing. That was the question all of them were being asked at the national championships last month. That's not a fair position to put them in, and the organization allowed that to happen too. So it's really just mishandled it in pretty much any instance it could.
About 15 seconds. Biggest priority for her successor would be what?
I would say make inroads or make sincere and visible public reach out to the survivors. That is the number one thing. These are the women who have been damaged and hurt the most. These are the women who can help move the organization forward. They have to be on board, and they have to believe the organization is sincere.
Be visible and be sincere. Nancy Armour, USA Today, always great to speak with you. Thanks so much. Now joining me on the phone, let's say hello to Rachel Denhollander, the original witness and whistleblower. in the Larry Nassar scandal. Rachel, when you heard that Kerry Perry essentially had been forced out late last night, what was your reaction?
I think it's a good step, but my reaction really is too little too late, because there is so much more that USAG and the USOC needed to be doing 2 years ago that they are still steadfastly refusing to do. And it's leaving USAG in a position where their athletes are at risk, their athletes are not getting the support that they need, and the sexual assault survivors are not able to move forward either.
We've talked a lot about gymnastics. You know John Manley. He's an attorney. I believe he actually has represented you and many other survivors. Yes, he has a dog in this fight, and it's financial. But what he says bears listening to, talking about in the wake of the firing of Kerry Perry. USOC leadership sat on its collective hands for more than a year while Ms. Perry assembled a board, which has remained silent while she continued to disrespect some of our nation's most gifted athletes and treat survivors of sexual abuse as adversaries. Sadly, the culture of abuse, which is rampant in USA Gymnastics, is rampant throughout the Olympic governing bodies, end quote. And there have been other allegations in other federations. Is the USOC, do you believe, in a position to lead on this issue?
No, I don't think they are, because they have completely lost credibility themselves. The USOC for the last 2 years has done nothing other than issue empty threats. And I think that we need to answer the question why. And one of those dynamics that we don't have answers to is what the USOC did after they received reports of Larry's abuse in 2015.
Do you have confidence they can get this right?
Absolutely not, because they haven't recognized what they got wrong. The fact that they could know in 2015 that Larry was accused of sexually abusing Olympic athletes and did absolutely nothing, and then allowed USAG to continue down this chaotic path for the last couple of years, doing absolutely nothing. We need an investigation into the USOC at this point, too.
When there was the house cleaning at gymnastics, nothing happened. What gives you confidence that even an investigation would bring the change?
Well, and outside an independent investigation to identify the people that enabled, the people that created these cultures of abuse, so that we can, essentially cut those people loose and replace them with members and directors who are going to actually lead and do the right thing, who are going to be accountable, who are going to protect our athletes, protect the children in these programs. Until we can replace the people that were problematic with people that are going to do the right thing, regardless of what the cost is, we're never going to be moving forward.
It continues to be an issue. Rachel Denhollander, and congratulations to you and your family on the birth of your baby, the baby girl, and all the best. Thank you for joining us. Nick Foles gets the call for Week 1, at least NFL Live, just 4 minutes and 20 seconds away.
It's a normal day. You're rushing out the door to get to work on time when suddenly, there it is, the dreaded service light. So what is it this time? Tire pressure, low coolant, time for an oil change? When it comes to service lights, head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. Drive in today and make the switch to Pennzoil. Ask for Pennzoil Synthetics, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube, leave worry behind.
Outside the Lines is brought to you by Old Spice. She knows best. And Ram Trucks, built to serve.
Decisive games in the WNBA playoffs, Mystics and the Dream, and also the Mercury and the Storm. Knicks is next. Here comes Wendy to tell you all about Nick Foles. We'll see you tomorrow right here.